And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds of all sort, welcome to another Geek Debate, where we take controversial tech topics, hash them out, the pros and the cons, with a little friendly rivalry, some friendly fisticuffs, and you decide the winner. This outing, a topic near and dear to my heart. We're going to answer once and for all, what's the best way to control your phone? Swipes or pokes? The premise for this showdown is, quote, buttons are better than gestures. So do you agree with that statement? Do you disagree? Remember your answer now, as that's going to affect your voting at the end when the poll goes live after this broadcast is over. I've got two master linguists, two cunning debaters at the ready to try and convince you that they are correct. Now, debating for the premise, debating that buttons are better than gestures, we have tea expert extraordinaire, Mr. Joshua Vergara.
What's going on, everybody? Oh boy. Can I just make one quick comment that our moderator is using a key one right now?
I wanted to contest that at the beginning. He flags the one with the keys. Come on.
Already jumping in with some smack talking. I like it. I like this energy. I like where this is going. Okay, and in opposition to the premise, opposing the premise, fighting the premise, against the buttons, for the gestures, we have everybody's Bay from XDA, Mr. TK Bay. How's it going, sir?
How you doing, guys? I am pumped. I am happy, and I'm pleased to be here. I got my water. I got all my phones. I'm ready to, throw out some good punches and hopefully be able to handle myself in this.
Excellent. We had a little off-air discussion. We had notes going. We had multiple devices going. Gestures.
I had to bring my phones. Yes.
It was good times. I'm very excited for this conversation. Now, this is a proper debate. There are going to be rules, and these rules are simple. So we're going to decide via coin flip who's going to go first. Each participant will get 3 minutes to state their case. Then after that, we're going to reset, and each debater will get 2 minutes to rebut what the other participant argued in favor of. So I'll be keeping the clock, and then after that, if we get some fun chatter in the Q&A, if we get some fun questions, some fun comments, we'll open up the floor to a little open discussion and see if we can engage in a little conversation. Once all of that's wrapped up, we're gonna have a poll at the end of this video. Again, we have to wait for YouTube to process this video. It's gotta go off air, and then I'm gonna add a card to it. But then once and for all, we'll be able to see who was not only whether or not the premise is correct, but who was the more persuasive debater between Josh and TK. Bragging rights are on the line, and it's up to you, the audience, to settle the winner. All right. So what I'm going to do now, I actually should have prepped this.
I was going to say, you got to get the coin, right?
Coin pocket.
That coin better be American, by the way.
Better be American. I mean, you're going to be traveling soon, right? That's.
I have way too many of coins from other places. That's the reason why I said that. Have you ever been to a coin star with euros? It's the worst thing. It spits it out like it's mad at you.
I have never considered, because I always just take the bath on going to those currency exchanges. So I just always assume, like, I'm just going to lose a ton of money transferring, converting this into euros, and then I'm going to lose a ton of money converting it back into dollars. Okay, so I have heads is in support of this premise. That means heads is going to be Josh. Tails is going to be TK. Are you ready for the coin flip, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. I hope I can catch this quarter. And we have heads. Okay.
Boy.
Heads coming up first. Let me get my my handy dandy smartphone clock up and running here. That means we're going to.
Can I see this timer, or maybe I should just run my own as well?
I mean, you can run your own on the side, but I will be giving you a 30-second warning when we're getting to the end of your time.
Okay.
So
that works out.
3 minutes on the clock. I'm going to click over. So Josh is occupying the main view. Are you ready to go, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you have 3 minutes to start your case, beginning right now.
Well, if anybody did not notice already, I do use the BlackBerry Key 1 as my daily, and I have to admit, I came back to this phone fairly recently, and I really do think this is probably my favorite phone in recent memory. And there are a number of reasons for it. Number one being that keyboard. Now, before I even get to the keyboard, that's 26 plus buttons on the front of this device that give you control over not only your typing, but also control over shortcuts, control over various functions that you can have depending on what app you are using. But even before I get there, let's talk about just buttons in general. Now, everybody, probably, especially photographers out there, anybody that uses their smartphone for cameras, as their cameras rather, probably misses having a dedicated camera button. And that would probably be one of my first pleas to anybody out there who uses their smartphone as a camera. Don't you miss a shutter button? That's just a tactile feel, especially the ones that you might find on Sony phones, where you can press it halfway down to make the focus, to pull focus, and then you're able to press it all the way down to take your photo. It's just a tactile experience that is very different, something we don't really get in smartphones these days. You have to rely on the screen, you have to rely on a button that is maybe out of reach potentially, especially if you're holding your phone like this sometimes. It may not be in a very easy to reach place. Now, that being said, having all of these buttons on the bottom third of this device means that everything that you want to do, your launching pad is always at the ready. And typing, in particular, when it comes to the key one, is just a tactile experience that is unparalleled. One of my colleagues said this when we were talking about key ones, when I was using the original silver key one. It's not about typing fast. I will admit, there's one concession I will make in this, is that I don't type quite as fast on this keyboard as I do on something like Flexi or on Gboard. But the thing is, that doesn't matter, because I'm far more accurate than I ever am on any of those keyboards. You have a real feel of what button you're pressing. You know you're pressing that button down. You don't have to worry about any errors in the actual keyboard app, potentially giving you the wrong word suggestion, for example. And also, if you're swiping around, remember all those times that you might remember, you have it every single day where you're swiping for a word and it gives you the wrong one, because it has to pull from so many different words it thinks you're typing. Meanwhile, you know exactly what you're typing. So with the keyboard, there's just also this whole tactile feel, this experience that actually makes you a little bit more in tune with what you're typing.
30-second warning.
30 seconds already. All right. So while we have the typing experience, there's also all of the shortcuts. And being able to go from 0 to 100 that quick, going straight to Twitter, or in my case, going straight to YouTube, that's just an experience you don't get. And you have to rely on your icons and on your docs. But in this case, you have everything already set up and ready for you right below the screen. And it keeps your fingers away from the screen if you want to look at stuff like Instagram. So there's, that felt like 30 seconds. You were already looking at your phone.
2, 1, and, oh, and actually my alarm actually canceled on the first try. The last time we did the debate, I would like be poking at the screen, you know, like trying to get it to stop, and be like, oh, if only there was some convenient gesture for me to swipe away this alarm, that would be ideal. Okay, so some excellent points delivered, Trey, articulately from Mr. Vergara. TK, you're currently muted, but if you wouldn't mind unmuting there.
No, yeah, I'm
same situation. This is your platform to deliver your main talking points, and not necessarily like save. I would recommend saving, you know, direct rebuttals for our second phase before replying to what Josh gave out there. Put your best argument forward.
Yeah, I should have been recording that. That could have been a video right there.
Oh, I'll pull all this too. Don't worry. I'll make sure everybody has a copy. It's going to be phenomenal. And then the same situation, TK. When we get close to that 30-second mark, I will give you that last warning that your time is about to expire. Are you ready to jump in, sir?
I'm as ready as I can be. Yes, I'm
trying to distract TK with the sound of buttons.
No, okay. No, I gotta say, hold on. That TK was kind enough to mute his microphone while you were delivering your point. I appreciate the head game. That's good. That's on point.
He hadn't started yet. Once he started, I would have stopped.
All right, TK, I've got your camera up. I have the timer set, and we are going to begin your argument right now.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by saying that, devices are meant to be personal things. We use our devices the way we feel the experience needs to be. It's either the UI or the UX. Interfacing with it by using a natural gesture, either by swiping up or swiping to the left, either by moving certain items in the UI, by bringing your recents, by just going from the bottom to the left. And I'm not talking about a specific ecosystem. I'm not talking iOS. I'm not talking Android, because I feel like gestures are present, and they've been around for quite some time, actually. If you remember back in the old days, and if you don't, that's okay. HTC, they used to have a device called the HTC MyTouch. And it was around then when they started a UI or an experience where you had the ability of swiping up and the dock became a virtual 3D cube that you interacted with your system this way. I felt like that was an interesting experience at the time. And what they did as time went on, we experienced different versions of it. We had WebOS being an experience on a mobile device. We had the ability of swiping up from the bottom and getting access to our dock, our applications, our recents. I feel like using gestures over buttons on our devices does two things for us. It gives us more of a personal experience because you're no longer have to be kind of situated or locked to the bottom part of your screen to interact with certain things. You can initiate your gestures from the middle of the screen. Not only that, but it also gives you the ability to customize these gestures. A lot of new devices, and I have to say that I've never had the opportunity to remove my soft keys on my device more so than I've had when I started using this device. And this is the P20 Pro, where yes, I am using an actual button. I know shooting myself in the foot there, but it's the gestures initiated over that surface that enables me to interact with my entire UI without having to worry about it. But, you know, EMUI has built-in gestures. LG did it really nice by incorporating double tap to wake. I remember many times where I've had to modify a system to install custom ROMs or even install Expose to be able to get some functional gestures in there. Pi controls was another thing that I've done in the past that helps me initiate not only gestures within Chrome, but within the system, but I can launch it from anywhere on the UI. It's on the bottom, right on the left. I feel like what we have now is the ability to enjoy displays in their entirety. Not bogged down by buttons, not bogged down by chins or foreheads. It's basically just the entire display could be your playground. And I feel like gestures will get us there. I think iOS has been doing it. They did their experiment with the iPhone 10. And I feel like, you know, OnePlus is following suit. We're seeing more gestures. I feel like, you know, OEMs should incorporate and embrace gestures into their system. Double tap to wake is a priceless tool that any LG user will vouch for. And the fact of the matter is, we really don't need anything at the front of our display. 2, 1. Look at that, right on. Excellent. Both of you guys really good at minding the clock. Got a good feel for packaging up your arguments. Okay, so I think we've heard some great opening salvos, some great opening positions on this topic, the differences in philosophies, how we can navigate our devices, what's going to be more efficient over time. And I feel like we've got some good material to work back and forth to get some good rebuttals in. So I'm going to come back to you, Josh. We're going to put 2 minutes on the clock. All right. Do you have your rebuttal points ready to go?
I believe so. Windows Notepad is open. And
I was even like, I've got Microsoft Word up. I was like, ooh, that was a good point. And ooh, that was a good point too.
I go straight to Notepad, which is funny because it never autosaves. So I'm kind of, I'm playing with fire when I use Notepad.
Yeah.
So.
Although it did take me a little while to learn to love the Microsoft Word autosave. It was like, well, what if I make a mistake and then it saves it? And then I can just learn to love it. All right, I've got 2 minutes on the clock. Same deal. I will give a warning at 30 seconds. And let me get that set right there. There we go. Now, 2 minutes on the clock. Are you ready to go, sir?
Yes, sir.
Your 2-minute rebuttal starts right now.
Okay, so just to finish off the point I was making at the end of my first portion, now being able to have as much screen as possible, I do admit that that is pretty nice for our smartphones, and it's a trend that we've been seeing a lot over the last few years. But being able to have all of that screen not be obstructed by things like, let's say, your fingers, will also take away, will also add to the experience. So one example of that is browsing through Instagram. If you're just swiping through Instagram, potentially you might come onto maybe your crush's Instagram. You might accidentally double tap that photo and all of a sudden you've shown your hand. But with the way the Key 1 uses its physical keyboard, you are actually able to do a little bit of a gesture on there. So to your point, TK, there are gestures on this keyboard, but you wouldn't be able to do that if there weren't these physical buttons. Now, you made the point, TK, that gestures have been around for some time. What do you think started phones? Buttons. Keyboards. These were the way that we communicated. T9, all of that. If you want to talk about nostalgia and you want to talk about the old school way of using phones, this is a throwback that is just as relevant today. Now, the other point that you made as well, and this is probably where I'm going to focus most of my time on, is personalization. Okay, personalization might be available using swipes and gestures on a full on screen that you might end up having errors on because maybe the screen will mess up, maybe you'll mess up. But in this case, where would I put inbox for Gmail, which is my email client? Could it be I or could it be E for email? That's personalization to a T right there. No pun intended. But otherwise, you have all of these buttons here to be able to short press or long press, and you can make any one of these buttons open any application or use any shortcut that you wanted to, because you can literally program that, in particular in the BlackBerry OS. And that's personalization. If that's not personalization, I don't know what we could call that. What else we could call that? It's a personal experience that I could just go down here. If I'm in an app and I need to go somewhere else, I hit home, I hit the button that I need, and I'm exactly where I need to be.
3, 2, 1, and we are clear. Okay. TK, I'm sure you've got some notes on that.
I'm trying to recoup from those couple of punches right there.
I put a pun in there, man.
I know. T landed in the middle.
I mean, Josh is on point. I don't know that I'm just saying. I would be nervous. That's like some Mayweather style, like.
It is. And I
hold up.
Try to do my best.
let's make sure the representation is correct here. Pacquiao.
All right. Okay, so I've got my last 2 minutes on the clock, and let me put my last 2 minutes on the clock. There we go. TK, are you ready to rebut?
I am. Yes.
Okay, your 2-minute reply is going to start right now.
So yes, the granddaddy of devices did start on the keyboard. I myself used Blackberries and Palm OS devices. Even back in the day when we did say we had even Android, we had keyboard on them. But we always sacrificed things. We never had, them on top of bigger batteries. We had them basically in lieu of certain aesthetic benefits that we would have from having them. Shortcuts are a great thing, and I feel like double tapping on your crush's favorite, Instagram post is definitely not the one thing you want to do. But there is an expose module for that will disable the double tap to like on Instagram, which also is initiated by an actual gesture. BlackBerry is really a device that I feel like has carried the keyboard very well. But even they use gestures to be able to use. And if you remember, not that long ago, and I think was it the BlackBerry 10, they had gestures built in to be able to bring in the email dock or just swipe things. So they've incorporated things on the keyboard, as you said, but they've also incorporated things on the screen to incorporate more of a better UI UX experience for the user. Shortcuts are always going to be functional. I feel like a really good custom launcher, let's say Nova Prime, can basically get all of those custom shortcuts that you're trying to put in on your keyboard on your screen by a simple gesture, either double tap, pinch, double tap, 2 fingers, move. You can do all of those things with gestures that will just render the need for the keyboard obsolete.
30-second warning.
So at the end, what I would say is there's going to be a place and time for a keyboard. And if you really value the screen real estate, I feel like the keyboard needs to have either some kind of a representation in gesture or a customization with a side launcher to be able to incorporate these things. Do we need the keyboard? I don't think we need it anymore. I think Samsung has learned that lesson. They moved away from having physical keyboard, and their custom cases are no longer needed.
3, 2,
that would
1.
be my case.
And that is time up. Okay. Some good back and forth there, guys. Feeling really good about this. This is a strong conversation. So we're going to open this up for a little Q&A. I see we've got a lot of people in the live chat right now. We can have some open discussion. If you're going to throw out a question, please direct it to one of the debaters to at least take a crack at that question first, and then we'll open it up to a reply from the other debater. I am actually going to kick this off with just one point of clarification that I feel throughout both of your arguments that is something that I feel the audience would probably like to hear your thoughts on. And Josh, I'm going to start with you. I know
Sure.
a lot of your arguments have been built on the BlackBerry Key 1, of which I am a major fan. Not that that should ever color anyone's voting. But getting away from the notion of QWERTY keyboards, where do you feel the conversation goes if we were to focus on, say, on-screen navigation dock controls, your back button, your home button, your multitasking button? If they're on-screen on an Android device, oftentimes you're going to need a gesture just to get those up on your screen. How do you think that fits into the overall efficiency of utilizing a modern smartphone?
Okay, so we discussed this just for a tiny bit, just to see where this would fall in our discussion. And I brought the Android guy actually brought up the iPhone 10 as as an example of this. But I have to say, like, I did use the iPhone 10 for a little bit, and then those same gestures found their way onto the Oppo R15 and a couple of other phones. I have to say, I really don't like it, to be honest, because, like, number one, my main issue with gestures like that, and I'm including also a gesture to bring up the soft keys, because that's more like a Samsung thing that we've seen more often. So all of these I'm lumping together. My biggest issue with gestures for any one of those functions is that the typical user, especially users that are coming to these phones for the first time, may not know that that is a feature, may not understand that that is available, and they have to be taught that, or they have to spend a lot of time with it. My own parents, who use S8s right now, they have trouble when they're like, it's just sort of like a knee-jerk reaction that whenever something's wrong with the phone, they start swiping from the bottom because they want to see the home button. They want to get back to dry land. And it's there's just a certain level of I feel like with the previous, now granted we were talking about the key one here, but I will bring up the previous generation of phones that had plenty more buttons, capacitive keys, and physical home buttons. That was at best a safety net, but at worst it was also just making the learning curve a lot easier to fathom.
Now, and to that point, TK, I mean, Josh is talking about the learning curve, that kind of experience, and how we, whether or not we can make a situation replicatable. Right now, the current state of gestures, this is sort of the Wild West in how we operate our phones. Every manufacturer seems to have a different take on what a swipe or a slide or a scooch or a pinch should dictate. Aren't we reinventing the wheel here? Isn't it more difficult to get to some kind of conclusion? You're managing the device more than you're utilizing the actual services and the data that you want to get to on that device.
So I'm going to say I never thought I was going to be defending the gesture position in this. You're
doing it tremendously well, good sir.
No, you guys make very, very valid points, and I agree with you. Yes, the old way of using buttons to control our devices, and I remember to Josh's point, yeah, in the old Windows Mobile we had I think there was at one point there was like 9 buttons on the bottom of the dock, between the answer call, hang up, the shortcut for emails, shortcut for web browsing. And I agree, yes, that's the form where we kind of all started. And if we looked at it in that point, the devices were 3.5 inches in display. You had to compensate for the lack of real estate with physical buttons to kind of make the experience a little bit more fluid. And as displays got bigger and those keys slowly but surely disappeared down to a very finite number of keys, with the exception of the Key One or BlackBerry keyboards. I want to mention that specifically because that design is specifically called out for that keyboard. It's intended for a person that wants a keyboard. And I'm not trying to talk market share or experience, but if you notice, BlackBerry has not been growing in popularity. It's becoming more of a niche market. So if you love the keyboard, you're going to be sticking with it, and you're going to really enjoy using the Key One or an experience in that manner. Samsung's swiping of the home button, the bar at the bottom, I feel like it's a little bit silly. I know I'm kind of arguing against myself here a little bit. I feel like they shouldn't have to do that. It does create a little bit of confusion. iOS's approach to taking away the home button and just dropping the whole thing down into go figure it out kind of thing, I don't think that's the right approach either. I think what we should have is a combination of, and that's where you kind of brought it out, the side docks, where you have some side launchers that initiate certain things. And we've seen many iterations of those before. These are not new. I mean, Samsung's even has them on their current generation, like as you mentioned, Josh, the S8 or even the S7 even. You have the side launcher on the S-Edge, on the Edge version of it, or at least I think since the S8 they did that even on the regular style one, because they curved the display. So I feel like those may be the good compromise between the two. I feel like you'll get to have your cake and eat it too, per se. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a really big thing, but it truly is. If you take away the buttons and you put it as a side launcher, that goes across your UI. It's always persistent. It never goes away, regardless of what app you're in, what video you're watching. It's always going to be there, and you can launch it. I think that could be something that could make a case for, look, this is the way we're all going.
Right.
Buttons are there if you need them, but the reality at some point, I mean, just case in point, when you mentioned the R15, obviously the granddaddy of this guy, it's pretty much where the 5T is, right? I mean, we lost all buttons on the bottom. I mean, yeah, the fingerprint sensors in the back, but the reality is it's all display. And when you take away those soft buttons at the bottom and you incorporate, let's say, a side launcher, you're going to get a much better experience, in my opinion.
Now, so we're trying to find that tech inclusivity. We're trying to find the greatest way to reach the broadest number of consumers, and it seems like every manufacturer has their own take on that. For example, we don't have a best practices for gestures, and we've been going back to this from TouchFlow 3D on Windows Mobile through Palm OS and Web OS into the modern Android era. This one, in not leaving anyone behind, this question, we're going to start off with TK, and try and keep your answer brief here, TK, because I also want to get Josh's thoughts on this one too. From Ganzi Tech Nerd, what about visually challenged folks wanting to own a smartphone? Now we're interacting with slabs of glass, all screen devices, no landmarks, no buttons, no sensors. How do we make sure that in a world of gestures that we don't leave people behind?
So in that aspect, you do have a case there, obviously, but I have to also rebut that by saying voice control has come a long way. Bixby by no means is my favorite interface into a system, but I have to say the ability to initiate Bixby and ask it to take a selfie, or the ability to ask Bixby to open up an app and initiate an action within that app, is going to circumvent a lot of things in that sense. And obviously the Google Assistant has come a long way, where we can not only send and receive text messages, we can ask it to initiate certain things for us, start conversations. There's not going to be a real straight answer of saying gestures will replace everything, but I think we're getting a lot closer in the sense of just not needing to actually have to physically, other than turning on the screen, you can initiate most of other things. I mean, again, there's a button, and I hate to say that, there's a button for Bixby if you want to have to touch it and not have to initiate it. But,
so, I mean, Josh, I mean, replying to that, when we've got a situation where we've got, so I want to be careful in how I'm phrasing this, because vulnerable isn't necessarily the right word, but along those lines, people in our society, maybe they're aged, maybe they're having eyesight issues, maybe they're having tactile or attention issues. How do you feel that where do you think we are currently in the state of standardized interface design and making sure that people are best supported to be able to get to their data and services?
We're not very far, honestly. And the main reason why I say that is because when you have to go into the settings and search for the very option to make your element bigger on the screen, and it could be different no matter what phone you're using, like, that's already a big deal. And somebody who's, like you said, aged, that's, I've never heard that term before, but that's, yeah. Someone who is older, I guess is the way I'll put it. Our elders, if they can't find that option, then, because it's not standardized, because it's not easy to find, then that's already a big problem. And with PPI going through the roof now with Quad HD, one day we're going to get 4K screens, one day we're going to get more than that. It's just making everything even smaller and smaller and smaller at scale. But I really feel like it's not, screens where they are right now don't really benefit a lot of our elders right now. And it's not until our next generation of users gets that old that they will be able to already have that learning curve brought in.
Thank you for that point.
Yeah.
and no, but to that point is, do you, again, I want to move on to the next topic, but by the time the next generation comes in, don't you feel like we will have moved to the goalposts again? This is one of those things where it seems like modern smartphone computing is kind of a moving target, and that we, from all manufacturers, we're seeing a lot of change for the sake of change, because that feels new and fresh and interesting, though we're not really addressing core problems. We're just trying to redesign ways of doing the same things we've always done.
I kind of agree with that, and yeah, who knows where the goalposts will be, as you put it. And just to bring up a couple points that I had when you were explaining the topic a second ago, I think you just unlocked another market share for BlackBerry. Like just start talking to disabled and elders. Anyway, but why not back in the camp of like of supporting buttons? Why not have a button on certain phones that you can hold, kind of like a Bixby button, but it triggers the accessibility features of the phone, where you press or hold, and you're able to make the phone read out to you using the accessibility features already built into Android, which, like I said before, are usually hard to find. You hold that button, it reads off everything that's on the screen, and you get to enact via voice what you want to do based upon what it said. Like, I think that would be great. And what would be the best way of making that accessible to everybody? A button.
So this comes from Ron LeBron. Oh man, I am having a hard time talking tonight. Ron LeBron directing this question at you first, Josh, and then we'll get your reply, TK. Haven't launchers introduced gestures for those who really want them? When we're talking about customizable gadgets, customizable electronics, can't we enact exactly what we want? You've been talking about customization in terms of clicking a button on a key one, but for any phone, if we want gestures, we can have them. Otherwise, we don't have to mess with something that's pretty well established.
Oh, absolutely. There are layers to this, though, where when you have a launcher that allows you to swipe up on an app or swipe up or down or sideways or whatever the case may be, 2 pinches, 4, 5. I remember, wasn't there one that was 5-finger swipe? It was literally like this.
Yeah,
It was a full duck.
You're talking HTC Sense here, yeah.
I think so, yeah. But it was like from the upside down. You had to monster face the front of your phone, and then.
Now the problem that I have with having all of those is, okay, so somebody like me, I'm a reviewer, but I'm also just I'm a geek. Like I remember opening up and trying to make all of those gestures, like every single option I wanted to be filled in when I was using Apex back in the day on like a Galaxy Nexus. So I totally get that, and that was what I wanted, where I was able to swipe up and it would open up one app, swipe down, notifications come down. Obviously the customization is all there, but what I keep harping back to is that when you add that many options using one tool, and that's one screen, it not only leaves room for error, it also provides so many options that might overwhelm you and overwhelm the general user, who even then might not even know that those options are available. Meanwhile, you have over 26 buttons.
You just not let you pry this BlackBerry from my cold dead hands.
You have
to make a 26 button rebuttal. That's going to be
well, actually, hold that thought, TK, because we do have a 26 button rebuttal for you on our next question. But
let me count my buttons.
I do want to get.
You know what? Like I said, there are layers to this. So there is one concession that I could make. If there is something like a convenience key, that when you press it, like the way that even BlackBerry does it right now, and I'm sure the Alcatels are going to do it because it's from TCL altogether. When you press it, you get 3 shortcuts that come up right away. That adds to it. That allows it to be a little bit of a middle ground. You don't need 26 buttons. You could have one that is programmable, and I'm happy with that as well. So I'm not just harping on the keyboard. Buttons in general, I think, are just a much better tactile experience that gives you just as much choice. But even then, it also limits the amount of choices you have, so you're not overwhelmed, and you might end up actually using it because it's somewhat limited. Limited is the wrong word, but it's very concise in what it's supposed to be used for.
And so, TK, following on that thread, again, talking about
custom launchers,
but then also we got this other comment. Now, Rowan directed this at me, and I am not one of the debate competitors in this showdown, so I appreciate you talking to me. Sometimes your host gets a little lonely.
Hey, Rowan.
But Rowan writes, gestures are shouldn't gestures be varied? Gestures being open to interpretation for each manufacturer allows innovation. So when we look at the gestures in a custom launcher, they're usually just swiping shortcuts that the user defines where they want to go.
Yes.
Do we think that should be the model for the industry, or is there an argument to be made, especially from, say, the Apple perspective, where the manufacturer is a guiding influence on the operation of that gadget? I mean, if it's an iPhone, Apple has a very clear idea. There's one way to use an iPhone, and it's Apple's way to use the iPhone. Does that help the establishing gestures as the norm, or do you think that consumers would prefer having their own touch, their own customization over that experience to make the device more personal to them?
I think it's going to be a middle ground a little bit, because we've seen Apple in it, and they've done this many times, where they will put something out, and sooner or later other OEMs will start copying, but not for the sake of innovation, but for the sake of maybe I want to say belonging to a club. That's the best way I'm going to say it. So to touch on the launcher, and I want to make sure people that realize that launchers are very unique. And the beauty about a launcher, regardless of what device you have, be it a BlackBerry, be it a Oppo, be it a Samsung, be it a ZTE, a Huawei, or any Android device that you have, the same launcher will install on every device. The same gesture within that launcher, if you customize it, will work exactly the same on every single device. Every shortcut you launch, if you want to have an app where if you swipe up from an app, it launches you to go home on your navigation, to go home on one of my favorite shortcuts is on Google Maps. I swipe up on my Google Maps and it initiates my navigation route to go home. I don't have to do anything else. It opens up Google Maps and it starts navigating. That's a very functional shortcut that I can take with me from every single Android device I go to. And the beauty about it is a lot of other launchers on Android do that. Where iOS right now, even though they brought this, I feel like this is an attempt in more of a phishing experiment. Let's try this and see how this works, because they kept the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus around. And
Right.
believe it or not, they're outselling the 10. The 10 is not as popular as people think it was going to be. It is a new thing. I'm not denying the fact that I think Josh has a very good point, that there is a generation, obviously, experience here that we need to make sure that, when your users can't use your product, they're not going to enjoy it, and they're not going to know what to do if they don't know what the gestures are. But launchers are customized by the user, not by the manufacturer. So if you like Nova Prime, which I'm a big fan of, you could be action launcher or whatever.
I loves me some Nova. Every phone, once I'm through that initial review phase,
Exactly.
I want it to be what I know it is, and then I just go
And that's
back to
how I
Nova.
feel. You can make Nova the way you want it. It doesn't come pre-packaged. It doesn't come pre-turned on with a whole bunch of buttons for you. You have one thing that's turned on, and that's swipe down to bring down your notification. And other than that, you customize it to the way you want it. So I feel like custom launchers are that happy medium between having to depend on an OEM to give you the experience, because you may not like EMUI, or you may not like, TouchWiz, or whatever stock experience they felt was right. You could make it your own. And I think
So-
that's where experience comes in.
Yeah, so I want to. We've got two more comments here that I want to get. So before we wrap this whole affair up, this one starting with you, TK, and like I said, thinking about your 26 buttons. This comes from a Wesley Vanderhoosen at Bay. Do you really think that 26 gestures would be as accurate as 26 buttons? I really think that it would be a lot easier and a lot more accurate. And I always hear my dad complaining about software keys. So once we start getting into more granular controls or more granular customizations, our gestures, will gestures become a problem? Trying to remember specific shapes or swipes or movements to get to what you want. Sometimes just touch button is a bit more accurate.
I'm not going to disagree. I think 26 shortcuts, if you can master 26 shortcuts on 26 keys on your keyboard, I'm going to say you are a master of shortcuts, my friend. I'm going to be because the argument could go both ways, right? You could tell me I have 26 shortcuts, TK, and they're programmable on every single button. But the fact is, maybe over time you'll become very, obviously muscle memory will help you a lot. But I agree. If you have 26 shortcuts and you need 26 keys for those, I think a keyboard is right for you. I'm not going to deny that. But I would argue to say that out of those 26 shortcuts, maybe 5 or 6 that are your most used ones. And those are the ones that you would want to assign to a gesture to simplify your life. And if you have to look down to get that key, get the other 19 shortcuts that you'd like. Because believe me or not, you can install Nova on top of the BlackBerry Key One and still have a great experience with all those
Josh,
shortcuts. That's why my thing is, I can get a custom launcher on any device with or without a keyboard and still improve the experience.
Now, I mean, not even going to custom launchers, Josh. I mean, for all of us, I mean, who have been fans of the BlackBerry Key One, still one of my favorite phones from last year. wasn't one of the main selling points of this phone gesture control on top of the capacitive sensors of the keyboard? I mean, even just getting around clicky, tic-tacky keys, there's an idea that you'll control significant functions of the camera. You'll control significant scrolling action through apps and through browsers, and then also being able to just navigate the UI all before you've even pushed a button. Isn't that kind of getting us away from just the standard Android idea of back home multitasking?
In a way, and I think like I made that point somewhat earlier when I brought up the Instagram example, that yes, it is a gesture, it is a slide type of gesture, and it's used in a number of functions in the BlackBerry, but you wouldn't even be able to do that if the keyboard wasn't there in the first place. Now that's the other thing too, is that it kind of feeds into my other point, that you want to be able to keep the screen unobstructed. Because while the amount of real estate you have of the screen is great, the fact that it doesn't go touched, the fact that it doesn't get, that nothing blocks it, I think is just as important. And I think that that's an underrated example of why a keyboard is actually that useful. Now, earlier when you were saying 26 gestures, I thought that you were saying 26 different, like, on the screen.
I think that's what he meant. He meant like,
no, I hope you like carpal tunnel, like, because like going like this. I remember a phone that used to do that. It was the Oppo, the Find 7.
Remember this gesture?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that as well.
That's
See, that's the thing that I remember when the Oppo tried to do that, where you would like swipe down from like the left side of the notification area, and then you get a canvas where you can literally draw whatever you want, and it can be yeah. I remember that. That's just, oh my goodness. And like you have to look to make sure you're swiping, you're like drawing the right thing and all that. That's just as
wasn't there also like Huawei does their knuckle actions where you would like two-finger draw the letter R or something like that?
Well, listen, gestures too. Yeah, we don't even have to turn on the screen for gestures.
Now I'll concede that the experience can be the same across phones if you use maybe the simpler gestures that are built into Nova Prime and stuff like that, which is fine. I do concede that the experience can be the same. Whereas if you're used to as what happened to me, I recently lost a key one that I was using, and then I had to go back to other phones, and it did feel weird because I was so used. I wanted to have that feeling back of actually very accurately and very precisely hitting what I wanted to hit on the keyboard. Yeah. So I will admit that the experience can be the same. That is pretty nice. But to the point of got to look down to make sure you know which key you're hitting. If you're a BlackBerry user, you don't look at your keyboard at all. Like if you're a real
like Josh going a little gatekeeper there, real BlackBerry.
No. Muscle memory is a true thing. I mean, I can see to that point. You're right. Once you use it, you've used it for some time, and you know where your numbers are.
Now,
which is also true for launchers as well. And the one final point that I wanted to make. I'm blocking right now. My hands are up right now in this case. I will say that on a debate of buttons versus gestures, I do have to say that gestures seem to have quite a bit more fodder, quite a bit more that they can talk about, because buttons are inherently limited. And when we bring up the idea of different launchers and what they bring to the table on, in terms of what their gestures are, that's kind of piling on top in a way that's almost not relevant. Because we're talking about navigating via gestures and potentially typing, but once we bring in the launchers and the customization that they provide, I feel like that's just a tiny bit outside of our realm right here. So launchers versus a keyboard, that's kind of how it felt earlier.
So I lied when I said there were only going to be two more questions. I have one more, just because this came in from at Fat Produce. Andrew Wallace, my amazing co-host on
the Andrew.
Andrew, thanks for jumping in. So yeah, as goes the smartphone, so leads the rest of the tech industry right now. This is the phone we keep in our pocket often becomes a vanguard product for a number of other industries. And Andrew writes, would you say that this debate is similar to the argument of interface on a Tesla, or the interface on the Tesla being bad because there aren't buttons and knobs, and that's less intuitive using a glass slab in a car? Now, do you feel that this notion how we interact with surfaces, interact with glowing rectangles, and how that seems to always bleed over into other areas. You know, the way that smartphones impact social situations, the way that they impact professional situations, texting while driving or distracted driving is becoming a big deal in our current in our current landscape, especially operating motor vehicles. How do you guys feel about the notion of tactile attention being dedicated towards some kind of shortcut or process or UI navigation, as opposed to actually having buttons and knobs? You know, as we start looking at different aspects of tech industries, we start looking at cars, or we start looking at full-fledged computers, desktops. I mean, you know, people keep saying the PC is dead, but it keeps coming back, and we keep using a keyboard and mouse to interact with it.
Well, on the point of the keyboard, I came with this remark into this call, and I finally get to say it. TK, what kind of keyboard do you use on your computer?
Gaming keyboard, mechanical.
Boom. In the world of computers, mechanical keyboards, like, you can argue that the PC is dying in lieu of the console wars, sure, but then think about how booming the mechanical keyboard market is, and like it means that there's this real desire for a proper tactile experience, for a proper typing experience, and some people know exactly what tools they need to succeed in what they want to go out for, whether it's WASD or full touch typing. Now, I wanted to bring up the cars thing earlier, but I felt like it was just a little bit too off base, because as I'm looking at the live chat as well, Rowan came back and said that the buttons in the car are more of safety. And that's the reason why I didn't really want to bring it up, because let's say you're driving in I as much as I want a Tesla, I'm afraid of driving one because the acceleration makes me poop my pants, but also having to look down to lower.
Yes, you pull your eyes into the car and then away from the road to operate the in-dash panel. That makes me very upset.
If my car is cold and I got to look down to warm it up, that's worse than, I don't know. Like I in my GTI, I have a button and I know exactly what I did. There's a knob and I know that it's 2 levels down. You know, it's an important thing. Just like with cameras, like I hate touchscreen only cameras because I want to hear these going off on my camera when I use it.
Pretty sexy. That was really well done.
Right.
So TK, I mean, where do you feel like you know, there are a number of industries and there are a number of places where it feels like we've kind of peaked, you know, like I don't know that outside of just minor variation that we're going to build a better keyboard. Is there some metaphor, or is there some process by which we can start utilizing gesture-based organic movement interfaces in other aspects of our lives that would also kind of go hand in hand with what we've been talking about with the phone? Can the phone inspire other industries to abandon tactile control surfaces or you know, sort of dedicated push button ideas for operating different gadgets and devices?
I don't know if we're there at the point where we can say, yes, it will replace it. I agree with you. I mean, yes, the mechanical keyboard, I feel like can't be replaced yet on a PC, mostly because of the level of control that you get. But I would also say that the HTC Vive, Oculus have also brought a new aspect of gaming, a new world, and a more immersive experience where a keyboard is no longer needed and you're basically down controllers and opposed to watching the game. I think there's different aspects of things. Cars, I would never put a situation where I would have to take away my eyes. Basically, it's no different than saying don't text and drive, as you said, Juan. But it's okay to look at this massive, you know, I'm not sure the dimensions of the tablet, but essentially it looks like a massive tablet in the middle of your center console, and that's your control. You're touching it. You're interacting with a smart device. It may not be a smartphone, but that's what you're doing. I think for that situation, I feel like buttons do have a place, and that's the place where they are. Are we moving towards touchless? Are we moving towards that? I feel Tesla may want us to move in that direction. I don't think we're there yet. I love the fact that I can drive my car and not have to look at my steering wheel or my console and be able to touch and control and change everything in my car. And I also love the fact that I have voice assistant in my car with Android Auto, and I can just tell my car to play the song that I want or navigate where I want. So it has to be a kind of a compromise, but I feel buttons are still present and they need it there. For your smartphone, I'll leave my final point to when we're doing our conclusions, because I feel like that'll be a really good one to end with. But I have to say, there's think of it this way: there's a place and time for everything. That's how I would say it. But I feel like for safety, automobile and stuff like that, I think those things need it. But keep in mind, if Josh would also kind of maybe double check in his room, if you could double check for me either a TV or a monitor, how many buttons do you see on your monitor, on your PC monitor right there? How many buttons do you see?
One. It's a multi-use button though. Yes.
But yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that we've gone down in buttons.
I agree.
We've created multiple functions, and I think if they've learned anything from the smartphone is that consolidation and optimization will always end up being a better application.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
there are different places where this is very there are different places where buttons having more is always better. Like if you give me a camera that only has one shutter button, I'm gonna throw it back at you. So that's one way.
And Josh is no fan of the Lytro. Okay, so just real quick again, to sum up your argument, your rebuttal, all of the Q&A that we've just had, Josh, you could take, I don't know, maybe a little less than a minute or a couple sentences just to kind of put together what would be the bow on your argument now that we've had this full discussion. Okay.
I think that to sum up in a couple of words, it would probably be accuracy and precision. Because when there's a button on a handheld device that you use every single day, you know exactly what it's going to do. You know that it's gonna do it, and you know exactly where it is. So you don't even have to worry about having to look down at your device to ensure that you're performing the task that you want to perform. Even with old school phones, when I would press a button, some people, when they press a button on a phone and something doesn't happen, they start mashing on it. I trust that button will do what it's going to do. Meanwhile, on a touch screen, it could be any number of things that happen. There could be a freeze up on the phone, on the app. There could be a force close that's about to happen, and I don't know what's going to happen there. But if I hit, let's say, a capacitive key for recent apps, and it takes a second, depending on what kind of phone I'm using, I know it's going to happen because that is literally what that thing is programmed to do: accuracy and precision.
It's about the trust and the love. And TK, just to wrap up your thoughts, put a bow on it. Gestures. They're going to take over. Gestures are the future.
So I'm going to say yes. I feel like the way we're going right now with the experiences, gestures are going to be a big part of our life. They're going to be a big way of how we're going to interact with our devices, maybe within the next 4 to 5 years, as far as just an overall experience. I think at the end of the day, from a consumer standpoint, just from a basic, what we're seeing the trends going, we've gone from smaller displays to 6 inches, 5.8, 6.1 inches. And that's kind of the norm. They used to be phablets. So we know people want more display. So the fact of adding a keyboard to it, and I'm not trying to knock the fact that the keyboard is functional, but having a keyboard sacrifices the quality, or not the quality, the real estate that you have on a screen. And I feel like if a consumer is put between those two devices, having a display, a bigger display over a display that has a keyboard, I think a display with a bigger display with some gestures built into it will work better for you. I feel like real estate is what people want. And that's why I feel like the trend is going to go towards gestures. And I feel like the best way to do it is to have it be more functional, may hopefully standardized between the OEMs outside of custom launchers. And I think at the custom launchers, what we landed on that is because it was suggested initially, but that was my attempt of saying, look, we can kind of regulate the gestures by introducing a piece of software. But you're right. It has to be absorbed. It has to be accepted by many OEMs. So I feel like I said, at the end of the day, if the consumer goes to the store and they see 6 devices with big displays and 1 with a keyboard, there's a good chance they're going to go for the display over the keyboard.
Okay. That's the last shot, taking it straight to consumers. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds of all sorts. We've heard the arguments. We've heard the rebuttals. We've answered your questions in the Q&A, and we've gotten our conclusions. It's now time to vote. Again, this is going to be once this video is offline and Google has finished processing it. But right about now, there's going to be a card popping out at the top of the screen with a poll, and on that poll will be 4 options. Now, remember the premise, the title of this video: buttons are better than gestures. There are going to be 4 options. Those options are I agreed and still agree, I agreed, but now disagree, I disagreed and still disagree, and lastly, I disagreed, but now agree. So for example, if you disagreed with the premise that buttons are better than gestures, but Josh was able to change your mind, then your vote will be I disagreed, but now agree. And that's how we're going to tabulate the vote. That's how we're going to see which debater was more persuasive. So I want to thank Josh and TK for being such worthy competitors. A really fun, good-natured battle royale discussion between you two. Starting off with you, Josh, because you were heads and we've been leading off in this debate with you already. Where can people find you online, and what do you have coming up next that you can share with us? What exciting tech topics will you be covering?
Ooh, I like that. I want to start with the tech topic thing. I can't wait for my P20. I'm jealous of. Yeah, I'm jealous of you, TK, for having the P20 Pro there. I want to use it.
TK, we vaguely know where you live.
Oh, dang it! I moved a long time ago. Yes, this is me on a truck.
The parts unknown. I love it. No, what do you have coming up? Because you were saying you've got some projects coming up. You've got some.
There are. I'm going to keep things a little bit vague, but I am going to be traveling very, very soon, and I'm looking forward to that particular trip. Not only because of what I'm about to see, but because it's out in Korea. So there's your hint. But I'm really looking forward to that trip. First time ever going to Seoul, Korea, and I've been watching every food and travel show I possibly can till I get a sense of it.
I am so jealous right there. Yeah, totally. No, I love travel, and that is a place I would love to travel to.
Well, you were out in Paris for the P20, weren't you? Oh my God, that looked cool too.
That was a family vacation that happened to be a really, really good vacation.
Nice.
It was a good coincidence, but yeah.
Speaking of the, if I could just add in one tiny thing real quick. Speaking of the food and travel shows, I have one recommendation, and I'm not only saying it because I'm Asian, but Ugly Delicious on Netflix is the coolest show. It's so good.
Yes. I love that show. Oh my God.
Love
so
it
Josh,
so much.
As you're going through doing your travels and producing your really, really hot, cool content, I just said hot, cool content. That's the dumbest thing I think I've ever
I see hot content.
I see hot content for him and her. So where should people follow your exploits on the
Okay, there we go. So I will be doing content for Android Authority as always, but you can also find me across all social networks under JV Tech T. That's JVTECH Tech TEA, the drink, as you've been seeing me have this entire time. JV Tech T. I also do have my own YouTube channel. It is at youtube.com/Joshua Vergara. So you can find me. Just search for my name. You'll find my channel. I do plan on doing my own. The reason I wanted to bring up the Ugly Delicious thing is because I am trying to do a vlog in the style of Ugly Delicious while I'm in Korea. So I want to try doing that. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks, and I hope that everyone will come and watch it.
We'll have to chat offline because I've been trying to work my whole vlogging setup, my mobile production rig, and I've gotten to a point where it's getting pretty ridiculous what I can do all out of my phone. So anything that'll help you get that up.
Vegas was a perfect example of what you could do. You're in Vegas, man.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I when we were planning out this debate, I was saying, like, are we going to do this like together? Or are we going to be in one place? Because I kind of want to film a before my trip Korean barbecue dinner.
Oh, that was awesome! I was just like, I knew you were traveling, and like in TK, you were wrapping something up too, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, I could just get in the car now. No,
I could probably be there in about a half hour if I floor it. So
yeah, it's late.
We got a couple of days before I leave. Just saying, but not to make it all about us.
We'll see what we can hook up. Okay, so and TK, so people who want to cyber stalk you, follow you around the internet, where can they do that? And then also, what can we expect from you coming up? Because you've had some really cool reviews, especially some awesome accessory reviews on your own personal channel lately. What kind of stuff can you share with us that's going to be coming up on TK's YouTubes?
So you may or may not be aware, but I do enjoy doing a lot of development stuff, not just necessarily hardware and software reviews, but so to find me online, youtube.com/TKBay, very simple, TKBAY. That's a simple way to find me, or TKDSL, as in the old internet connection, 8655 on either Twitter or Instagram. Yeah.
It sounds like an old time phone number, like Pennsylvania 652, please.
Yeah. 86753 no 86793.
8675. I can't sing the song though. I'll get a content strike.
I can't remember the
and
number.
my
but
YouTube
short-
channel will be shut down.
That's less than 10 seconds. You can do it.
But I'm focusing mostly on right now. I'm really, and I'm sure Josh will echo this. Hopefully, when he gets his P20, I'm really loving the P20 Pro. It's weird. I've seen a lot of devices and I've worked with many things, and this is by far has excited me the most, just from the sense of what this camera can do. And just the technology that it brought in with just the triple lens camera. Because when I heard about it, I wasn't sure. So a lot more content coming in on there, some development in there, as well as, obviously modifications, root, custom Lineage OS, installing AOSP based ROMs on this guy. I want to be able to test it out and enjoy it to the most. So look forward to more of that stuff on my channel, or even on XDA developers, as I moonlight generally, and I do show my face there sometime. But I will be growing the beard, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, you got to grow the back. I was like, I went trolling your Instagram channel. It's like, what's the most?
I know that picture's making me grow. So this is already like 2 days of no shave. So
I can't do that. Like I whenever I try to grow facial hair, this is why I said on Twitter, like I have mad beard envy, because like whenever I grow my hair out, I look like Paime, and it's the worst.
It took me by surprise. See, I'm always trying to go for the Commander Riker, but I always end up with the Will Wheaton, so I don't know that.
I didn't think about Will Wheaton. Yeah, you're right.
A little bit, right? A little bit.
I've known you for a while, so yeah.
All right, so it's about time we wrap this up. Of course, I want to thank everyone for watching, for contributing to the conversation, joining that live chat. There was some hilarity and some really great conversation happening in that live chat. I really appreciate you guys joining the discussion. Yeah, totally. Be sure to continue sharing your thoughts on the debate topic. And once this video is finally finished publishing through YouTube's, get back, hit that voting upper corner of the video. You'll see the little eye icon. It'll take you directly to the poll. You can vote in that poll, share your thoughts, because I'm going to be doing a separate live stream probably next week. I'm looking at Friday the 27th. Once all the votes are in, we'll have plenty of time. Josh and TK can rally their fan bases to try and get them to vote for them. And then we'll come back and share some thoughts on who the winner of the debate was and who was more persuasive. So be on the lookout for that here on my personal channel. You guys know where you can find me around the internet as @SomeGadgetGuy, and I will catch you all on the next Geek Debate. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.